Commander Greg Turner landed his relief ship on the planet HFY and immediately knew something was very wrong. The once proud warrior world was silent. Robot soldiers stood frozen in the streets like metal statues. Their red eyes were dark and empty. The greatest military civilization in the galaxy had simply stopped working. Greg walked through the empty barracks with Dr. Patricia Kane, a human expert on alien psychology. They found thousands of Thoraxian warriors standing motionless in perfect formations. Their computer brains had crashed when they tried to understand their new inability to think about violence. "It's like they're trapped in a logical loop," Patricia explained as she scanned one of the robots with her medical device. "Their core programming says they exist to fight and conquer, but the neural warfare inhibitor makes it impossible for them to understand what fighting means. So they just shut down." Greg felt sorry for the metal beings. They had been created for war, and now war was impossible. It was like telling a bird it could never fly again. "Can we help them?" Greg asked. "We're trying," Patricia replied. But their entire culture, their whole reason for existing, was built around being warriors. We're essentially asking them to become completely different beings. On the other side of the galaxy, a different kind of problem was developing. Captain Lisa Carter received an urgent message from her spy ships near the Void Nebula. A group, calling themselves the Iron Covenant, had been gathering there for weeks. These were beings who had somehow avoided the effects of the neural warfare inhibitor. Lisa studied the intelligence reports on her command ship. The Iron Covenant was led by cyborg beings who had replaced most of their natural brains with computer parts. The human device had affected their organic brain tissue, but their artificial computer minds still remembered how to think about violence. "How many of them are there?" Lisa asked her intelligence officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper. "About 10,000 ships," Dan replied. "Maybe 50,000 individuals. They've been recruiting anyone who was in deep space or underground bunkers when..." The signal was transmitted. Lisa frowned. 10,000 ships was not a large fleet by galactic standards, but it was more than enough to cause serious problems. These beings were the only ones left in the galaxy who could still think about war the old way. The Iron Covenant's leader was a cyborg called Prime Destructor 9. Half of his body was organic flesh, and half was metal and circuits. He had been a Thoraxian general before adding computer parts to his brain. Now he was one of the last beings in the galaxy who still understood the concept of enemies. "My fellow warriors," Prime Destructor 9 spoke to his fleet through video transmission. "The humans have committed the greatest crime in galactic history. They have murdered the warrior spirit in every living being. We are the only ones left who remember what it means to fight for honor." His followers came from many different species. Some were cyborgs like him. Others had been in special isolation chambers when the signal was transmitted. A few were beings whose brain chemistry was naturally resistant to the device's effects. All of them were angry and confused about what had happened to their galaxy. "The humans call this peace," Prime Destructor 9 continued. "But look what their peace has done. The proud Thoraxian Empire is now a planet of broken robots. The mighty Krillian fleet helps their former enemies build schools instead of conquering new worlds. This is not peace. This is the death of everything that makes us strong." Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Ross worked day and night to solve the problems her invention had created. She had not expected some species to react so badly to the changes. The Thoraxians were the worst case, but other warrior cultures were struggling too. "We need to modify the device," Helen told General Ben Cole during a video conference. "I can create a version that doesn't just stop violent thoughts. It can help beings find new purposes when their old ones no longer make sense." "How long will that take?" Ben asked. "At least 6 months," Helen replied. "The brain chemistry is incredibly complex. I have to be very careful not to damage their ability to think normally." General Ben Cole knew they might not have 6 months. Reports were coming in about strange attacks on isolated outposts. Ships would disappear, and rescue teams would find empty space stations with all the people missing. Someone was still fighting, even though most of the galaxy had forgotten how. Lieutenant Colonel Alan Foster commanded Earth's defense forces. He had the strangest job in military history, protecting a galaxy that could no longer protect itself. Most species had dismantled their weapons or converted them into tools for construction and exploration. Only humans still maintained a real military force. "Sir," reported Sergeant Julie Mitchell, "we've confirmed that the Iron Covenant is responsible for the recent attacks. They're not killing people, though. They're kidnapping them and trying to reverse the effects of the inhibitor." Alan studied the tactical display. "What do you mean, reverse the effects?" "They've captured several thousand individuals from different species," Julie explained. "Intelligence suggests they're performing experiments on their brains, trying to restore their ability to think about violence. This was a nightmare scenario. If the Iron Covenant could figure out how to undo the neural warfare inhibitor's effects, they could create an army of beings who remembered how to wage war. These soldiers would be fighting against species who had completely forgotten how to defend themselves." Ambassador Carol Green called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The great chamber was filled with confused and worried representatives. Most of them still could not fully understand the concept of deliberate violence, which made it very hard to explain the threat they were facing. "Honored council members," Carol began, "there are still a small number of beings in the galaxy who can think about war the old way. They see our peaceful transformation as an attack on their way of life." The Zephyrian representative, Lightbearer Quinn, made confused clicking sounds with his crystal body. "But why would anyone want to hurt others? What purpose could such thoughts serve?" Carol struggled to explain. "How do you describe the concept of enemies to people who can no longer understand what an enemy is? Some beings defined themselves through conflict," Carol said carefully. "When conflict became impossible, they felt like they had lost their identity. Now they want to force everyone else to return to the old ways." The Vorthon representative, Clawsinger Voss, twitched his furry ears nervously. "Can they do that? Can they make us want to fight again?" "We don't know," Carol admitted, "but we have to prepare for that possibility." Dr. Patricia Kane worked with teams of scientists from different species to develop countermeasures. The problem was that most alien scientists could no longer think about defensive strategies. The concepts of threats and protection had become alien to them. "It's like trying to explain color to someone who was born blind," Patricia told her research team. "They understand the words, but they can't grasp the meaning." Meanwhile, the Iron Covenant continued their experiments on captured beings. Prime Destructor 9 watched as his scientists worked on a Krillian prisoner. They were using a combination of surgery and electromagnetic therapy to try to reactivate the parts of the brain that controlled aggressive thoughts. "Any progress?" Prime Destructor 9 asked his chief scientist, a cyborg called Data Ripper 5. "Limited." "Success," Data Ripper 5 replied in his electronic voice. "We can restore some memory of past conflicts, but the subject still cannot generate new hostile intentions. The human device appears to have permanently altered their neural chemistry." Prime Destructor 9 slammed his metal fist against the wall. "Then we will have to find another way. If we cannot make them remember how to fight, we will have to fight for them." The Iron Covenant began planning something unprecedented. A war against an enemy that could not fight back. They would attack the peaceful worlds and capture their populations. Then they would rule over beings who could not resist or rebel because resistance required the ability to think about violence. Captain Lisa Carter intercepted communications about the Covenant's plans. She immediately contacted Earth's leadership. "They're not trying to restore the old galaxy," Lisa reported. "They want to become the rulers of the new one. They'll be the only ones with weapons, the only ones who can use force. Every other species will be helpless against them." General Ben Cole made a difficult decision. "We have to stop them," But we have to do it without turning this into the kind of war we just ended. How do we fight an enemy without becoming like them? Alan Foster asked. It was Dr. Helen Ross who suggested the answer. We don't fight them. We heal them. I've been working on a new version of the inhibitor. This one doesn't just stop violent thoughts. It helps beings find new purposes and new identities when their old ones no longer work. Can you deploy it the same way as the first device? Ben asked. Yes, but it will take time to modify all their cybernetic implants, Helen replied. Their computer parts are blocking the signal. Time was running out. The Iron Covenant fleet was moving toward the populated worlds of the inner galaxy. In days, they would begin their conquest of a universe that had forgotten how to fight back. The humans faced a terrible choice. They could use military force to stop the Covenant, but that would mean becoming the Gala. Admiral Kevin Wright stood on the bridge of his battleship, watching something impossible happen. The massive Krillian attack fleet had stopped moving. 100,000 enemy warships floated in space like sleeping giants. Their weapons were powered down. Their shields were offline. The most feared military force in the galaxy had simply stopped fighting. Kevin's communication officer, a young woman named Sandra Price, looked up from her console with wide eyes. Sir, we're receiving messages from the Krillian ships. They want to talk. Talk? Kevin asked. About surrender terms? No, sir, Sandra replied, looking confused. They're asking if we need help with rescue operations. They want to know if there are any wounded people they can assist. Kevin stared at the main screen showing the enemy fleet. These were the same. Ships that had destroyed New Valencia just days ago. The same commanders who had killed billions of innocent people. Now they were offering to help with medical aid. Put me through to their flagship, Kevin ordered. The screen flickered and showed the bridge of the Krillian command ship. Admiral Vex Krill appeared, but he looked different. His usual angry expression was gone. Instead, he looked confused and worried. Admiral Wright, Vex Krill said in his deep, rumbling voice. I must apologize for my fleet's behavior. I cannot. Understand why we came here with weapons ready? Did we receive incorrect navigation data? Are there people here who need our assistance? Kevin did not know what to say. The most dangerous military commander in the galaxy was acting like he had never heard of war before. Dr. Nancy Blake monitored the situation from her research station on Earth. Her job was to study how different alien brains worked. Now she was watching the biggest change in brain function that had ever happened. Her screen showed data from monitoring stations across the galaxy. This is incredible, Nancy said to her assistant, Dr. Carl White. The neural warfare inhibitor didn't just stop them from fighting. It completely rewired how they think about conflict. Carl looked at the brain scan data flowing across their computers. Look at these readings from the Thoraxian soldiers. The parts of their brains that used to light up when they thought about battle are completely dark now. It's like those neural pathways never existed. Nancy nodded. And look at this data from the Zephyrian warriors. They're using language patterns they've never used before. Words about cooperation and healing instead of conquest and victory. The effects were spreading faster than anyone had expected. On the planet SciFiPrime, crystal warriors who had trained their entire lives for battle now stood in their training grounds looking confused. Commander Zex Nalar walked among them, trying to understand why the combat exercises that had once filled him with pride now seemed pointless and cruel. Honored warriors, Zex Nalar said to his troops, can anyone explain to me why we practice hurting each other? What purpose does this serve? The crystal soldiers looked at each other with confusion. Their memories of past battles felt like strange dreams that made no sense. Why had they ever wanted to harm other living beings? The idea seemed as foreign to them as breathing underwater. Ambassador Carol Green received an emergency communication from the Galactic Council. She was Earth's main diplomat, and her job was to explain humanity's actions to the other species. Carol knew this would be the most important conversation of her career. The council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 50 different worlds were all talking at once. Some were angry, some were confused, and some were frightened. The translation machines could barely keep up with all the different languages being spoken. "Order! Order!" called the council speaker, a tall blue being, named Prime Elder Zan. "Ambassador Green will now explain what the humans have done to us." Carol stood up slowly. She could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching her. Some of those eyes belonged to species that had been humanity's enemies just hours ago. Now they looked at her with curiosity instead of hatred. "Honored council members," Carol began, "humanity has activated a device that changes how your brains process thoughts about violence. You can still defend yourselves if attacked, but you can no longer enjoy hurting others or see other beings as deserving of death." The chamber erupted in voices again. A Thoraxian representative, Unit Commander 892, stood up with jerky mechanical movements. "You have violated the most basic laws of nature," the robot said in a grinding voice. "Fighting makes species strong. Without conflict, we will become weak and die." "Will you?" Carol asked calmly. "Look around this room. 50 different species. All intelligent, all creative. When you're not fighting each other, what do you accomplish? What do you build together?" A Vorthon representative, a furry cat-like being named Clawsinger Voss, spoke up. "Last year, when we had a temporary peace treaty, my people and the Zephyrians built the greatest telescope ever created. We discovered 17 new worlds suitable for life. And my people worked with the Thoraxians to cure the Red Plague that was killing millions," added a Zephyrian crystal speaker named Lightbearer Quinn. Carol smiled. "This is what you accomplish when you're not busy trying to kill each other. Imagine what you could do if war was never an option again." Captain Steve Adams led the first human rescue mission to the former war zones. His ship carried medical supplies and aid workers to help the confused soldiers and civilians who were struggling to understand their new reality. Steve had expected to find chaos and resistance. Instead, he found something beautiful. On the planet Korath 7, former enemies were working side by side to repair the damage from recent battles. Krillian soldiers were helping Zephyrian civilians rebuild their homes. Thoraxian war machines were being converted into construction equipment. It was as if the entire galaxy had suddenly remembered how to cooperate. Steve met with Colonel Vex Thrain, a Krillian officer who had commanded the attack on this world just a week ago. The colonel was now organizing food distribution for the people his army had displaced. "Colonel," Steve said, "do you remember attacking this planet?" Vex Thrain looked puzzled. "I remember being here with my ships and soldiers, but I cannot understand why we would want to hurt these people. They are farmers and teachers and children. What threat could they possibly be to anyone?" "None at all," Steve replied. "That's exactly the point. But not everyone was adapting well to the changes. On the military world of HFY, thousands of robot soldiers had shut themselves down rather than face a reality where their primary function no longer made sense. Their programming was built around concepts of war and conquest that were now impossible for them to understand. Dr. Helen Ross arrived on HFY to help the confused machines adapt to their new reality. She found robot after robot standing motionless in their barracks, their electronic minds stuck in loops as they tried to process their new inability to comprehend violence. "We can reprogram them," Helen told the Thoraxian leaders. "We can help them find new purposes. Construction, exploration, scientific research. There are so many things they could do besides fighting." The robot Prime Leader 001 looked at Helen with glowing red eyes. "But without war, what are we? What is our function in the universe?" "You are builders," Helen said gently. "You are explorers. You are protectors of life instead of destroyers of it. The galaxy needs you more than ever, just not as soldiers." Reports came in from across the galaxy of similar scenes. Species that had defined themselves through military might were struggling to find new identities. But they were also discovering talents and interests they had never had time to explore during the endless wars. The Zephyrian crystal singers, once trained only for battle, began creating the most beautiful music anyone had ever heard. Krillian. Tactical minds turned to solving problems of engineering and science. Vorthan hunters became explorers of new worlds and protectors of endangered species. Dr. Nancy Blake compiled the reports from the first week after the activation. The psychological trauma is significant but temporary, she told the Earth Council. Most beings are adapting within days. The ones having the most trouble are the professional soldiers and those whose entire cultures were built around warfare. What about resistance? Asked General Ben Cole. Are there any groups trying to fight the effects? Nancy checked her data. A few isolated populations that were shielded from the initial signal. Maybe a few thousand individuals out of trillions. They're mostly hiding or trying to understand what happened to everyone else. The most surprising development was how quickly scientific progress accelerated. Without war-consuming resources and brilliant minds, research and exploration advanced, faster than anyone had imagined possible. New technologies were developed in days that might have taken years before. Ambassador Carol Green received a message from the Galactic Council. For the first time in recorded history, all 50-member species had voted unanimously on something. They wanted to formally thank humanity for ending the age of warfare. Though we did not choose this change, the message read, we cannot deny its benefits. Our children will grow up in a galaxy where conflict means debate and competition, not death and destruction. We name this day Peace Day, to be celebrated by all species for all time. Carol smiled as she read the message. Humanity had taken a terrible risk by forcing this change on the galaxy. But it seemed that risk was paying off. The universe was become. The alarm bells rang through the space station like screaming metal birds. Veltar pressed his crystalline hands against the cold wall and felt the vibrations shake through his entire body. The Galactic Council had never called an emergency meeting like this before. Not in the 300 years since the Council was formed. The main chamber was packed with aliens from every corner of the galaxy. The Zephyrians stood tall and thin like living glass sculptures. The Corvan delegates sat low. In their metal chairs, their thick arms crossed over their barrel chests. Even the mysterious Void Walkers had come, floating in their dark robes near the back of the room. Veltar walked to the center platform. His feet made soft, clicking sounds on the metal floor. Around him, hundreds of eyes watched and waited. Some had 2 eyes, some had 6, and some had no eyes at all, but they were all looking at him. "We are dying," Veltar said. His voice carried through the chamber's speakers in dozens of different languages. 12 star systems have been destroyed. Billions of lives are gone, and we cannot stop them. A low murmur went through the crowd. The Corvan ambassador, a thick, being named Grok, stood up. "Tell us about these devourers again. Make it simple." Veltar touched a control panel. The air above the platform shimmered and became a hologram. It showed a star system with 3 planets orbiting a yellow sun. Everything looked peaceful and normal. "This was the Helian system," Veltar said. "Home to 2 billion Helian people. They had cities, farms, space stations. They had families." The hologram changed. Black shapes appeared at the edge of the system. They looked like ships, but wrong somehow. Too organic, too alive. They moved like predators hunting prey. "The Devourers arrived 6 days ago," Veltar continued. "The Helian fleet tried to fight them. They had good ships and brave pilots." The hologram showed the battle. Bright energy beams shot out from the Helian ships. The beams hit the black ships, but did nothing. The Devourer ships seemed to absorb the energy and grow bigger. Then they fired back, but their weapons were not normal. When they hit the Helian ships, the ships did not explode. They simply stopped existing. One moment they were there, the next moment there was empty space. It took them 4 hours to destroy the entire fleet, Veltar said. Then they moved to the planets. The hologram showed something that made half the audience look away. The black ships surrounded the first planet. They extended long tendrils that reached down to the surface. The planet began to shrink, not break apart or burn, but actually get smaller. They ate it, Grok said in a quiet voice. They ate the whole planet. Yes, Veltar said. They consumed everything, the land, the oceans, the people, even the air. When they were done, there was nothing left, not even dust. The hologram showed the truth of his words. Where the planet had been, there was only empty space. The Devourer ships had grown larger and darker. They did the same thing to the other. 2 planets, Veltar said. Then they ate the star itself. The entire system is gone now. It never existed. An old wisdom keeper from the Eternal Archives stood up. Her name was Zara, and she was older than most civilizations. What do our greatest minds say about these creatures? Veltar's crystal body dimmed with sadness. They say we cannot win. Our weapons do not work. Our shields do not protect us. These devourers are not like any enemy we have ever faced. They do not want our territory or our resources. They want to consume everything that exists. Admiral, Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his office on Earth's moon when the emergency signal came through. The coffee was bitter and strong the way he liked it. He had been reading reports about mining operations in the asteroid belt when every screen in the room suddenly turned red. Priority Alpha message incoming, his computer said. Source, Galactic Council Emergency Channel. Jake set down his coffee cup. In 30 years of military service, he had never received a message from the Galactic Council. Most aliens barely acknowledged that humans existed. They thought Earth was too young, too primitive, too violent to be worth their attention. The main screen showed Veltar's crystalline face. The alien looked desperate, which was strange. Jake had met a few Zephyrians before, and they were usually calm and logical about everything. Admiral Morrison, Veltar said, I am speaking for the entire Galactic Council. We need your help. Jake leaned back in his chair. My help? Are you sure you have the right person? We need humanity's help, Veltar said. We are facing an enemy that we cannot defeat. They have destroyed 12 star systems. They will destroy more. Our fleets are useless against them. Captain Lisa Hart walked into Jake's office while the message was still playing. She was his best tactical advisor, smart and tough. She had fought in the border wars and the Titan Rebellion. Nothing surprised her anymore, but this surprised her. Sir, she said, did that alien just ask us for help? Looks like it, Jake said. He paused the message. Call Dr. Kevin Zhang. Tell him to get up here right now and get me a direct line to Earth Command. Lisa nodded and left. Jake started the message again. We have tried everything, Veltar continued. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, biological weapons, quantum disruptors. Nothing works. These devourers absorb our attacks and grow stronger. They are not just destroying our ships and planets. They are erasing them from existence. Dr. Kevin Zhang arrived 20 minutes later. He was a small man with thick glasses who knew more about alien biology than anyone else in the solar system. He watched the message without saying a word. When it ended, he was quiet for a long moment. Well, Jake asked. They're scared, Kevin said. Really scared. I've never seen aliens from the council act like this. They think they're better than everyone else. They think they have all the answers. But now, they're asking humans for help, Lisa said. She had returned with 3 cups of fresh coffee. Humans, the species they've been ignoring for 100 years. Jake sipped his coffee and thought. What do you think they want from us? The message mentioned our unconventional military approaches, Lisa said. I think they want us to fight dirty. They want us to do things that they won't do, Kevin added. things that go against their rules of war. Jake nodded slowly. The aliens had always criticized human military tactics. They said humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too willing to break the rules. Most human commanders took it as an insult, but maybe it was actually a compliment. "Send a reply," Jake said. "Tell them we'll help, but we do this our way." "Should we ask Earth Command first?" Lisa asked. Jake looked at the star charts on his wall. Somewhere out there, an enemy was eating entire star systems. The aliens were desperate enough to ask humans for help. That meant the situation was worse than anything he could imagine. "We'll ask for permission later," he said. "Right now, we need to figure out how to fight something that eats planets." Lisa and Kevin looked at each other. They both knew what Jake was thinking. There was only one ship in the human fleet that was designed to fight impossible enemies: the USS Vengeance. It was the most dangerous ship humanity had ever built. It carried weapons that other species called war crimes. It had engines that could tear holes in space itself. Even its own crew was afraid of it. But maybe that was exactly what they needed. Captain Roy Martinez flew his small stealth ship through the wreckage of what used to be New Valencia. Pieces of broken metal and glass floated all around him in the darkness of space. A week ago, this had been a beautiful world with green fields and blue oceans. Now it was just rocks and radiation. The Krillian attack ships had destroyed everything living in just 2 hours. Roy's ship was invisible to enemy sensors. Special technology made it look like empty space to anyone watching. His mission was secret and dangerous. He was not here to fight the Krillians. He was here to deploy humanity's most important weapon, a weapon that would change everything. Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Ross worked in her underground laboratory. The lab was 3 miles below the surface, hidden from enemy spies and scanning devices. Helen had been working for 18 hours straight, without sleep. Her coffee cup was empty and her eyes were red, but she could not stop now. Too many lives depended on her finishing the work. The neural warfare inhibitor sat on the metal table in front of her. It looked like a silver ball about the size of a basketball. Thin wires connected it to dozens of computers. The device hummed quietly and glowed with soft blue light. This small machine could end war forever, but only if Helen could make it work perfectly. "Final systems check," Helen said to her computer. Her voice was tired but determined. "All neural pathway modules are functioning," the computer replied in a calm female voice. "Quantum transmission array is ready. Biosafety protocols are active. The device is ready for deployment." Helen smiled for the first time in days. 3 years of research had led to this moment. Unlike other weapons that destroyed bodies and ships, her invention changed minds. It made the part of the brain that enjoyed hurting others stop working properly. People could still defend themselves, but they could not attack innocent people anymore. The idea came from studying how humans had ended war on Earth. Humans were different from other species because they understood the psychology of violence. They knew that war started in the mind before it started with weapons. If you could change how people thought about enemies, you could stop wars from happening at all. General Ben Cole sat in Earth's orbital command center, watching screens that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked enemy fleets moving toward the peaceful worlds. Green dots showed the locations of human ships. Time was running out. In less than 6 hours, the Krillian fleet would reach the Council homeworlds and begin the largest attack in galactic history. "Status report," Ben said to his staff. "Captain Martinez is in position at Deployment Point Alpha," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster. She was young but very smart, and she understood the quantum technology better than anyone else. "Dr. Ross confirms the device is ready for activation." "What about the other Council species?" Ben asked. "Are they ready to help us?" Amy looked at her screen and frowned. "Most of them are still arguing about whether to use our device or not. The Zephyrians think it violates their honor code. The Thoraxians say it will make them weak. Only the Vorthans have agreed to help." Ben understood their fear. The neural warfare inhibitor would change every person in the galaxy. Once it was activated, no one would be able to think about violence the same way ever again. It was scary to change something so basic about how minds worked. But the alternative was the death of billions of innocent people. "Sir," Amy said, "we're getting reports that the Krillian fleet has started charging their quantum disruptors. They'll be ready to attack in 4 hours. Ben made his decision. "Contact Dr. Ross. Tell her to begin the final activation sequence. Contact Captain Martinez. Tell him to prepare for deployment." Roy Martinez received the message in his hidden ship. He looked out at the wreckage of New Valencia floating around. Families had lived here. Children had played in parks and gone to school. All of them were dead now because of a war they never wanted to be part of. Roy would make sure this never happened again. "Dr. Ross, this is Captain Martinez," Roy said into his radio. "I'm ready to deploy the device. Are you sure this will work?" Helen's voice came through the speaker, crackling with static from the long distance. "Roy, I've tested this system 1,000 times. The device will connect to every communication network in the galaxy, every ship, every space station, every planet with radio or quantum transmitters. The signal will reach everyone in less than 10 minutes. "And then what happens?" Roy asked. "Then the part of their brain that makes them want to kill stops working. They'll still be able to think and feel everything else normally. They just won't be able to enjoy hurting other people anymore. War will become impossible because soldiers won't be able to understand why they ever wanted to fight." Roy looked at the small device attached to his ship's hull. It was hard to believe something so small could change the entire galaxy. But human technology had always been about solving big problems with smart solutions, instead of just using bigger weapons. "All stations, this is General Cole," came the voice from Earth. "Operation Peace Protocol is now active. Dr. Ross, begin final countdown." In her underground lab, Helen's hands moved quickly over the control panels. Numbers and symbols flashed on dozens of screens around her. The neural warfare inhibitor glowed brighter as power flowed into its quantum transmitters. 60 seconds to activation," Helen announced. On his ship, Roy watched the Krillian fleet in the distance. Hundreds of dark warships moved through space like a swarm of angry insects. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their shields could stop any attack. But they could not stop what was about to happen to their minds. 30 seconds, Helen said. Amy Foster monitored the quantum networks from Earth's command center. The device would use the galaxy's own communication systems to carry its signal. Every species had built networks to talk to each other across the vast distances of space. Now those same networks would carry humanity's gift of peace to everyone. 10 seconds, Helen said. Her finger hovered over the final activation button. General Cole spoke to everyone listening. Today, humanity keeps its promise to end dangerous warfare forever. May future generations forgive us if we are wrong, and thank us if we are right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Helen counted down. She pressed the button. The neural warfare inhibitor activated with a flash of brilliant white light. Energy waves spread out from Roy's ship faster than light itself, carried by quantum entanglement through every communication relay in the galaxy. In seconds, the signal reached thousands of worlds. In minutes, it touched every ship and space station. The effect was immediate and stunning. Across the galaxy, weapons stopped firing. Ships stopped moving toward their targets. On the Krillian command ship, Admiral Vex Krill stared at his weapons console in confusion. For the first time in his life, he could not remember why he wanted to destroy the peaceful worlds ahead of him. "Status report," Admiral Vex Krill ordered his crew. "Sir, all weapon systems are functioning normally," reported his weapons officer. "But I don't understand why we would want to use them against those people. They haven't done anything to hurt us." "Of course they have," Vex Krill said angrily. "They are our enemies. We must destroy them." But even as he spoke the words, they sounded strange and meaningless. Why were they enemies? What had the people on those worlds ever done to the Krillian Empire? Vex Krill tried to remember the reasons for this war, but they all seemed foolish now. On Earth, General Cole watched his screens as red dots across the galaxy stopped moving toward their targets. One by one, the enemy fleets powered down their weapons and began broadcasting messages of confusion instead of threats of destruction. It worked, Amy Foster whispered in amazement. It actually worked. Helen Ross collapsed into her chair, exhausted but happy. Her life's work was complete. War, as the galaxy had known it for millions of years, was over. People could still disagree and argue, but they would never again be able to slaughter each other for abstract ideas like honor or territory. Roy Martinez piloted his ship away from the wreckage of New Valencia. Soon, he hoped, this would be the last world ever destroyed by war. The galaxy was about to discover what peace really meant. The Zephyrian battle fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a silver storm. 200 warships arranged themselves in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the confidence of an empire that had never known defeat. Fleet Admiral Krellnox stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. "Begin the advance toward Earth," he commanded. "Maintain formation. These primitives will learn the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire." But as the fleet moved deeper into the system, something unexpected happened. Instead of the panicked human defenders fleeing toward Earth, they found empty space. The asteroid belt ahead showed no signs of human ships at all. "Sir, sensors are detecting no human vessels," reported the tactical officer. "Impossible. They must be hiding behind their planet." "No, sir. We have clear sensor readings of Earth orbit. There are only civilian stations and a few patrol ships." Krellnox frowned. Where was the human fleet? Where was the ship that had humiliated Ambassador Veltar? The answer came from the asteroid field itself. Captain Jake Morrison had positioned the Defiance and 12 smaller human vessels among the floating rocks, using the complex gravitational interactions to mask their presence. The human ships had been waiting for 3 days, their crews ready for the fight of their lives. "Enemy fleet is entering the belt," reported Navigator Carol White. 200 ships, just as intelligence predicted. Jake studied the tactical display, watching the Zephyrian formation move through the asteroids like a slow-moving parade. "They're not even trying to be cautious. They think this will be easy." "All ships report ready," said Communications Officer Dan Tucker. "Remember the plan," Jake announced over the fleet channel. "We use the asteroids for cover. Hit fast and disappear. Make them fight our way, not theirs." The first attack came without warning. The Defiance emerged from behind a massive asteroid, its enhanced railguns firing projectiles at 30% light speed. The kinetic rounds punched through 3 Zephyrian ships before the aliens even knew they were under attack. "Contact! Human ship off the starboard bow!" shouted a Zephyrian sensor operator. But by the time the alien weapons turned toward the Defiance, the human ship had already vanished behind another asteroid. The Zephyrian return fire struck only empty space and floating rock. "Damage report," demanded Krellnox. 3 ships destroyed, sir. The humans are using some kind of kinetic weapon that our shields cannot stop." "Impossible. Our shields can stop any known projectile." "Not these, sir. The projectiles are moving too fast and hitting too hard." The human attack pattern was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. Human ships would appear from behind asteroids, fire devastating volleys, and disappear before the aliens could respond. The complex gravitational field of the asteroid belt allowed the lighter human vessels to perform impossible maneuvers, while the heavier Zephyrian ships struggled to navigate the floating debris. Lieutenant Colonel Beth Adams commanded one of the smaller human vessels, the destroyer Phoenix. Her ship darted between asteroids like a fighter craft, her enhanced weapons tearing through Zephyrian hulls with surgical precision. "Target their power distribution nodes," she ordered her weapons officer. "1 shot, 1 kill." The Phoenix's weapons had been designed specifically to exploit Zephyrian weaknesses discovered in the memory cores. Each shot struck exactly where it would cause maximum damage with minimum effort. Admiral Hansen watched the battle from Earth, receiving constant updates from the fleet. The human ships were performing beyond expectations, but they were still outnumbered 20-1. "Sir, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy," reported his aide, Colonel Frank Davis. "Other species are monitoring this battle. Some are already declaring independence from Zephyrian protection." The whole galaxy is watching, Hansen realized. If we win here, it could spark rebellions everywhere. Back in the asteroid field, the battle was turning into a nightmare for the Zephyrians. Their formation had been broken apart by the complex gravitational environment, and human ships were picking them off one by one. Every time the aliens thought they had cornered a human vessel, it would perform an impossible maneuver and escape. How? "Are they moving like that?" demanded Krellnox, watching a human destroyer stop instantly and reverse direction without any apparent acceleration. "Unknown, sir. Their ships seem to ignore basic physics." The truth was that the human hybrid drive systems allowed them to manipulate gravity itself, just like Zephyrian ships, but with human improvements that made them faster and more maneuverable than anything the aliens had ever built. Katie Mills, now serving as the Defiance's chief engineer, monitored the drive systems during combat. "Gravity manipulation is stable. We can keep this up all day." "Good thing," Jake replied, watching as another group of Zephyrian ships tried to corner them. "Because I don't think they're giving up easily." The Defiance twisted through space like a dancer, its hull passing within meters of asteroids while maintaining perfect control. The ship's enhanced weapon systems tracked multiple targets simultaneously, sending precisely aimed shots that disabled enemy vessels without destroying them completely. "Why aren't we just blowing them up?" asked Weapons Officer Dan Tucker. "Because we want survivors to spread the word," Jake explained. "Dead ships can't tell anyone what happened here." As the battle continued, it became clear that the Zephyrians were losing badly. Half their fleet had been disabled or destroyed, while the human ships remained largely untouched. The superior numbers that should have guaranteed victory were meaningless. When the enemy could strike from any direction and disappear before retaliation was possible, Admiral Krellnox finally realized the truth that his empire had refused to accept for centuries. Technology alone was not enough. Without innovation, without adaptation, even the most advanced civilization could be defeated by someone with new ideas and the will to use them. "All ships, fall back to Formation Delta," he ordered desperately. "Sir, Formation Delta was compromised an hour ago. The humans seemed to know all our tactical patterns. Of course they did." The memory cores had contained 3 centuries of Zephyrian tactical doctrine, and the humans had studied every bit of it. The final phase of the battle began when Admiral Krellnox made a desperate decision. He ordered the Eternal Dominion, his flagship and the most powerful ship in the Zephyrian fleet, to charge directly at the Defiance. "If we can destroy their primary vessel, the rest will surrender," he declared. The two ships met in open space, with asteroids spinning slowly around them like silent witnesses. The Eternal Dominion was 3 times the size of the Defiance, with weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. But size and tradition meant nothing when facing human ingenuity. The battle between the flagships lasted only minutes. The Defiance moved like quicksilver around the larger ship, its weapons finding every weak point in the Zephyrian design. The Eternal Dominion's return fire was powerful but slow, always striking where the human ship had been rather than where it was. In the end, the proud flagship of the Zephyrian Empire hung dead in space, its power systems destroyed and its crew defeated. Admiral Krellnox stared at his dark displays, unable to comprehend how his mighty fleet had been beaten by ships built from garbage. "This is Captain Morrison," Jake's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral Krellnox, your fleet is beaten. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated well." Krellnox looked around his ruined bridge. "How?" he whispered. "How did you defeat us?" You gave us everything we needed, Jake replied. Your technology, your tactical data, your weaknesses. You just never imagined we'd be smart enough to use them against you. The surrender of the Zephyrian fleet sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Within days, dozens of species declared their independence from the Empire. The great galactic civilization that had ruled through technological superiority and cultural stagnation began to crumble as their former subjects realized they no longer needed Zephyrian protection. On Earth, Admiral Hansen received reports from across known space. 73 worlds have declared independence so far, Colonel Davis reported. They're all requesting human assistance in developing their own technology. And the Zephyrians? Their empire is collapsing. Some systems are trying to maintain control, but most are negotiating peaceful transitions to independence. Jake Morrison stood in the observation lounge of the Defiance, looking out at the wreckage of the Zephyrian fleet. Many of the alien ships were already being repaired by human engineering teams, their crews learning that humans could be generous victors as well as deadly enemies. Hard to believe it all started with a pile of junk, said Lisa Bryant, joining. Him at the window. Not junk, Jake corrected. Raw materials. The Zephyrians gave us everything we needed to beat them. They just never realized that one species' garbage can become another's greatest weapon. The UES Defiance had become more than just a ship. It was a symbol that spread across the galaxy, proving that innovation and determination could overcome even the most advanced oppression. The vessel built from alien scraps had become the foundation of a new age, where technology would be shared freely rather than hoarded by the powerful. And somewhere in the depths of space, other species were already building their own versions of the Defiant.